Thanks so much for joining me. Well, we've seen a bit of an uptick in wildfire activity across Canada in recent days, so let's talk about where that's happening and what's behind it. And we'll start by looking at a map of active fires here from CIFC. We can see we've got action basically from west to east through Canada's boreal forest zone. These red dots here are out of control wildfires, and we've got a number of them from western and southwestern Northwest Territories into northern Alberta there. Lots of those in Wood Buffalo National Park. Perhaps our biggest cluster focused over northern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but also very active in northwestern Ontario and across much of northern Quebec. These purple dots here are monitored wildfires. That basically means those are just fires that officials let run, letting nature run its course, because these fires are not immediately threatening things like human life, communities, resources. They're very remote in many cases. But some of these other out-of-control fires are causing problems, and we've got a number of active evacuation orders in different parts of the country, including places like Fort Simpson and Wrigley in Northwest Territories, Lynn Lake and Marcel Colombe First Nation in northwestern Manitoba, the Casablanca Lake First Nation in northwestern Ontario, and also near Walsh River there west of Labrador City in Labrador. So we're seeing some problems out there as a result of these fires. If we actually go ahead and look at some satellite imagery from the northern prairies, where we're seeing a lot of that action there. We can see a number of fires here, and the winds blowing from the east, blowing the smoke westward. It's getting caught up in the upper level flow here. And we've got quite the pall of smoke there over eastern Northwest Territories and southern Nunavut there in Kivalliq there. Smoke also traveling to other places like Alberta, reducing air quality there in recent days. And, when we talk about wildfires and fire spread, we think about fire weather conditions. That's warm, dry, windy conditions. That helps these fires spread, but it's also the prolonged warm and dry weather that can sort of prime these forest vegetation, these forest fuels, to make them more receptive of fires. And then you just need an ignition. And across Canada, we tend to see most of our ignitions in the spring being human-caused, in many cases very accidentally human-caused. And then once we get into June and July, it tends to become more lightning-caused. And about 50 or 55% of our fires across Canada are caused by lightning, but they account for like 90% or more of the area burned. And a lot of the reason for that is that these lightning fires tend to be in very remote areas before they can be actioned, and they can balloon quickly, especially when you see these sort of favorable fire weather conditions and dry forest fuels. And this image here was shared by Mike Flanagan on his Canada Fire Weather Outlook page here. Highly recommend checking this out for a more in-depth look at the fire situation and the forecast. By the numbers here, we're at just under 800,000 hectares burned as of the evening of July 1st. That's getting close to about 50% of our 10-year average. So we can see big uptick there in action across Canada in terms of area burned in the last week of June. We would typically be at about 1.76 million hectares at this point in any given season. And we're based on the 10-year average anyways. And we're almost 50% of that. And of course, we can see it's been fairly quiet season till the last week of June here. We do typically see an uptick in area burned across Canada through the month of July, and we are starting to see that now. And we'll likely see that continue in the coming weeks given the forecast. Preparedness level across Canada, the national preparedness level is 3, which is moderate. It's a scale basically from 1 to 5. And when you're moderate, it just means that we're seeing fire activity picking up in one or more jurisdictions, and it's causing a need for more fire personnel and equipment to be shared across these jurisdictions. Of course, it varies by jurisdiction. Agency preparedness level of 3, which is sort of moderate for Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Ontario, Newfoundland, Labrador, and parks as well. Quebec at a level 4, meaning that they're needing a little bit more assistance. And of course, when one jurisdiction has less action, they can afford to send their resources elsewhere, which we've been seeing. Alberta send a number of their resources to both Northwest Territories in terms of we've got an air tanker group there sent to the Northwest Territories, as well as some personnel over to Quebec from Alberta. CIFC also sending some high-level folks to help out in the Northwest Territories. We've also got a problem here in the southwestern United States with an ongoing outbreak of wildfires that are causing significant problems. And again, this is sort of the case in point. We're talking about ongoing drought conditions. This area of the Four Corners saw record low snowpack through the winter and dry conditions persisting into the summer, which is why we're seeing this active outbreak of wildfires. Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. There's not a lot of trees to burn in this area, but the areas that do have trees saw recently some dry lightning across the region. And that's why we're seeing, with these conducive hot, dry, windy conditions with drought, lots of big fires there across the landscape. And of course, smoke can travel at different levels of the atmosphere. You can get a big pall of smoke traveling over your region, kind of darkening the sky, making the sky orange, and you won't actually smell it. It won't influence your air quality if it's higher up in the atmosphere, but it can also be down low. And when you're closer to wildfires, you tend to get more impacts to air quality. This here is a smoke model. It's called Firework, and I would highly recommend checking it out. It's from Environment Canada. You can look at where this is showing our PM 2.5, basically our fine particulate matter, the stuff that's not good to breathe in. You can breathe it deep into your lungs, and it has negative impacts on our health. We can see, based on this forecast, lots of smoke here still lingering in Western Canada, Northwest Territories, across Northern Quebec, and across parts of Atlantic Canada as well. So check this out if you want to see our forecast smoke conditions. This is, again, low-level smoke, the stuff that can influence our air quality. And of course, we are seeing impacts to air quality with air quality alerts in different parts of the country, especially closer to those wildfires. Now, taking a look at our forecast for the next few days, continuing to see elevated fire danger there through much of the Northwest Territories and adjacent areas of the Northern Prairies, as well as across far northern Quebec and also parts of northern Quebec and western Quebec and northern Ontario. In the coming days, continuing to be fairly hot out there, warm, dry, windy, with persisting elevated fire danger through much of the Northwest Territory, southwestern Nunavut there, as well as across northern Quebec. And as things stay warm and dry in many parts of the country, we'll continue to see elevated fire danger in the coming days. Some areas going to see some help from Mother Nature here in terms of accumulating rainfall over the next 7 days, and including some of our communities where we're facing evacuation orders here in the southwestern Northwest Territories, getting some rain in that area as well across far northern Ontario and into northern Quebec and Labrador. So good news for those communities there. Still remaining a little bit warm, dry, and windy in northwestern Manitoba there, so not quite out of the woods in the Lynn Lake area, though I've heard that fire crews are doing a fairly good job there of containing that fire. In our extended outlook here for the rest of basically the next 6 weeks or so into the middle of August, looking at warmer than normal conditions across much of the country, save for, in terms of our forested areas, save for Yukon and northwest BC, as well as parts of far western Northwest Territories. Also staying relatively dry across much of British Columbia and southern areas of our boreal forest zone. Looks like we might get some relief farther north in the boreal, but farther to the south where it's warmer and drier than normal. This will support the potential for continued fire spread in BC with this forecast, especially across the south here where it's warm and dry. As we would typically see fire season picking up in BC toward late July and August, certainly looks possible this year. So that trend of ongoing wildfire activity right now picking up likely to persist given this forecast in the coming weeks. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.